Hello everyone, how are you doing? How have you been? It's a beautiful rainy summer day here and I'm coming to you with my matcha. Tastes really good, as always. I'm now getting into these matcha drinks, which are really the core of my life at this stage in terms of health goals, even wealth goals, because as your mindset improves, your financial goals improve. And that's really the great thing about matcha. As you may know, I'm a coach, and although it feels a bit of a joke to say that right now because I'm not practicing with anybody and I'm not working with clients except on myself, I do something called self-coaching, which I find really helpful. I still basically find it something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I believe it makes a difference. And we get to that in a bit. Actually, I'll be talking about how coaching makes a difference, how it's a paramount, and also the challenges. So, for example, why it's been difficult so far to get any clients, or why it may be difficult for you to get those clients. Although it may be very different for everybody, I'll just be solely basing this on myself and what I have found out so far. So stay tuned and see through, hopefully. So, coaching. There are basically two reasons why it may be very difficult to get any clients, and this is why I have found from my own research I've conducted on myself. And having analyzed my situation, I've done some situation analysis on myself, and I realized there are two reasons why it's primarily and extremely difficult to get any clients at this stage of my professional life and life, basically. Yeah. So the first reason is position. So we underscore position, we get stability, safety, and sustainability. So what are these? Stability is basically your basic circumstances and any external circumstances or internal that may be affecting your livelihood, mindset, and so on. And then we have safety, which is how, from when you have established yourself as a stable person, how safe coaching can you really conduct? Is your coaching safe? So things like client satisfaction, performance, and so on. Is your coaching getting the results and in a safe manner, in a way that doesn't traumatize the clients? And then sustainability, which is just basically rinse and repeat. Can you rinse and repeat your coaching? Can it work for various different people and different clients, your ideal clients, and so on? So there are, if we go back to a little bit on stability, there are different circumstances affecting your coaching and your livelihood, your mindset, and so on, which is affecting in turn your coaching. Okay, so to give you an example, think about your social position, something that I have suffered with this. The main reason why coaching, I'm not getting any clients right now for my coaching, is the same reason why I was unemployed. It goes back to position, it goes back to orientation. We'll get to that later in a bit, but right now we're talking about position. So if you think about position, think about stability, safety, sustainability again. So the reason why I want to focus a little bit on stability is because this is the other two you can manage. When you have established yourself with stability, and you can conduct the safe coaching. Your coaching can be sustainable, but the first one is really stability. So by stability I mean your social position, your livelihood. Can you support yourself? How good do you feel in your self-esteem? How certain you are in the future? Can you really coach without projecting any of your insecurities onto your clients? And this is where it gets interesting, because there's circumstances and then there's coaching. You can separate the circumstances from the coaching to an extent, and kind of take it from a clear-cut kind of mindset and approach it that way, where your circumstances are not your focus. Your focus is the client and the coaching itself. However, we can't stay too focused on the client and the coaching if you have these stability factors affecting you, because you're going to get distracted. You're going to end up projecting insecurity onto your client. You're going to not feel so secure in yourself. Can I really coach? It may be the question that you ask by the end of that. So stability is really important, and yes, we can separate the circumstances from the coaching, but to an extent we need to get that stability right, we need to get that position right, and then our coaching is going to be superb. Okay, so that's something I found out, and this is a strategy that I'm actually applying right now. Hopefully it works out, inshallah. So another thing that I want you to consider is people's position, not just your position, but people's position to you. Your position versus people's position, basically. And people can be positioned in a way that is contradicting to you. What do I mean by this? I've been in a working environment where everyone was positioned, from the trainees to the trainers. Let's just use vague terms right now. I don't want to get too specific about that working place example, but everyone has the similar position to each other. They positioned in the authority, in their association, and so forth. And this may be contrasting to you if you are suffering from some kind of a insecurity, and I don't mean psychological insecurity here, I mean like a natural insecurity that you are not in control of. For example, you don't agree with certain principalities of the place. That's going to be very natural. That's going to be an insecurity that you have right now, because you cannot meet them there. That doesn't mean you should change your mind about your principles and values. No, you should stick with them. The very reason why I am where I am today is because I have principles and values. I don't mind ending up homeless, with mental illness, with anything, as long as I am standing firmly on the ground on my values and principles. So that is that. So it's really important to consider people's position around you. It may be affecting you. For example, your clients may not share a similar position to you. They may be more confident in their position. They may have already established positions. You may not have the social position that you require enough to have enough confidence to approach those clients, to make a transformation, to help them. And this is something that I'm actually suffering right now for my life, because I have no social position. I was unemployed before I found coaching. A bit of background for me: I went to university, found out that it wasn't it for me, and finally I can say this with clarity and maturity. Although I didn't have that in the past, I kept trying to go back for some reason to that place for my passion, but now I know that it's just something about the identity of the place that just didn't match with me and its orientation and so forth. So I'm now in a place where I have values, I have principles, and I have a position, but it's not as strong as I would like it. I'm not paid, for example. I'm not paid for the work I do. I don't work with anybody, and my social position has a huge insecurity right now. But it's something I'm fine. We can let that go on for a while, for as long as it takes, because what's really important is to get that position right, that stability, that safety, that sustainability, in a way that feels authentic to you, not in a way that contradicts your principality and your values. And these insecurities would exist as until a certain point when they no longer exist. So I mean, that is that really. So quick recap: position, stability, safety, sustainability, circumstances, and also people's position with respect to your social position, psychosocial abuse, and so forth. It's all about psychology here, really. What works for you is going to work for your client, most likely, because your ideal client is a version, it's just a different version of you at a certain point of their progress, which you may have already gone through. So that is that. Okay, so we now have orientation. Again, this is about your particular orientation, your beliefs, your behavior, your expectations, your ambitions, versus people's orientation, their beliefs, behavior, expectations, ambitions. Sometimes there's a match. When there's a good match, you're going to have the client, you're going to be the employee, you're going to nail that job, you're going to nail that task, and you're going to do absolute outstanding. But when there's a mismatch of orientation, that's when it's very difficult to get along, really, and to stay from a place of value and principles. So it's very difficult to continue with that type of setting. And this is partly what has happened to me in my personal life. If you don't mind me talking about that a little bit, I've already mentioned it, but just interjecting, really. It's so important to stay with who you are, with yourself. No matter how much the world wants to shut you down, you still rock, you still come back again, you still feel alive, and you take on life one more time. So the first one, we talk a little bit about position. The second one, orientation, not too much, but you get the picture, hopefully. So you may be stuck right now. There may be a no way out. Like for myself, I'm a coach, I'm a brilliant coach. I read plenty on coaching. I love coaching. I see myself coaching others. However, it's just not happening. You may be stuck in your career path. You may be stuck in a more specific area of your life. Here's the thing, sometimes you're just stuck. There's nothing you can do within your control to change that situation. And there's something about external circumstances, not just your internal ones, like your mindset, that may be affecting you. The politics of the country you live in, the economy of the country you live in. Are you confident in the authorities of the country you live in? Do they come out with policies that you feel are targeted by them? Like, for example, what happened to me when I was in university, there was an austerity in the country, and it really affected me. They raised the tuition fees. It affected me. I was the first person for my family to go to higher education, and I was worried about my siblings, younger ones, and the pressure was mounting. The orientation of the place wasn't matching with me. They expected differently, they wanted to work differently, and it was pretty much a racist, fascist place. This is what education is like in Britain, unfortunately. So is employment. Is based on hierarchy and harmony. I felt rejected, and I think it was an authoritative level. I didn't feel like there was anything inclusive of me that I could have had the chance to achieve better, to do really well. And that's one of the problems in this country that I live in. So I mean, that is that politics can affect you, they can have an impact on you. I've never come across, there was one MP who mentioned something to do with my situation, and she didn't really, no one took her on that, if that makes sense. So it's very hard to find somebody you resonate with, somebody to write to, maybe an MP, someone to understand your feelings. I'm a woman, I am black, I am Muslim, I am all these things, and there isn't a single person I can speak with, to listen to resonate with, to take something from, that would help me have a sense of future. It's been over a decade since I've been to university, and for me that was the end. I couldn't get work, my mental health deteriorated. That's a bit of background for me, and I couldn't, I'm still coping with a mental illness to this day. So I mean, that can have an effect on you, yes. So here's the recipe that I'm applying on myself. Sometimes when there's no way out and you feel really stuck, you can grow really desperate. And by what I mean by growing really desperate is turning to alternative solutions. Coaching is not going to solve the politics, the economy, the people's positions and orientations, whatever that gives them that particular direction that is at contrast with you, where you're going, where you're headed in life, what you think of, what you think about things. So what I tend to is prayer. I know it sounds very humble, but this is something that I do. I pray to find something, just a sign, really. It could be about my life personally, or it could be about the lives of others. For example, what we're seeing is happening in Palestine, which is now going through a genocide, and there's a lot of complicity in the world leaders, the Western world, which leads the world and which is technically behind Israel and what it's doing. They are really, it's just the Western nation in the end, and they are greatly complicit. There's no way out of that. No one's gonna come and teach America, no one's going to intervene on America. They can have regime changes elsewhere, for example what we're seeing in Iran. They can do that, but no one's going to come and do anything to them. They're going to blow up a bunch of Muslim kids and nothing happens to them. No one's going to, and this is the level of apathy that we have in this in the world right now, where we are so numb to things. When it happens to us, we're so numb about it, but when something happens to them, like the Manchester, I was here when the Manchester attack happened, and you couldn't help but feel their pain. I don't feel any pain or anything. I mean, I do feel pain, but I just don't feel it as good as I would like to. When something happens to Palestinians, or it's become so normal to see these Palestinian deaths, to see these Lebanese deaths, to see these Iranian deaths. It's become so normal. It's very hard to think about any Muslim lives being lost at all. And with all due respect, there are differences and stuff. This is an anti-Muslim war in my belief, and I have feelings about it, of course. So I mean, to not tire you with details from around the world, but this is what's happening, the psychology, the numbness of that psychology that you may have, that numbness when you don't feel anything, when something is happening to you, when you have intimidations, threats, and so forth. But when something happens to a Western entity, you feel it immediately. You feel the scare, you feel, oh my God, terrorism, oh my God, all of these things. and it's quite sickening, really. But this is the situation of the world right now, and there's absolutely nothing that can be done to whatever that's dominating the world doing this to people, whether it's whichever part of the world they're involved in at the time. They're always doing something horrible to people. The West is established on racism and fascism, and it's not going to go away. I have a very good idea about who they are. It's about time I've spoken about them, and I've spoken about it. Actually, I have a bunch of scars. One of it is very Western, so that's that.